Hello and welcome. Aristotle said, excellence is not an act, but a habit. And as I read more about my guest tonight and talked with others, I realized that that's really a mantra for my guest. Mark Rosen is with me, who, as he describes in his book, worked at the highest level and worked as hard as he could throughout his whole career. Really go guy in terms of focus. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Mira. It's nice to be here. It's nice to sit down and chat with you.
Yes, thank you. I've wanted to do this for a long time. We are taping on the day before Valentine's 2019, and so keep that in mind as you listen. You retired only about a month ago from
Correct.
CCO television, but you're still working full-time at KFAN radio.
Yes, I am. That was an easy decision. I mean, the beauty of having that creative outlet on radio, where I've been working, gosh, now for like 14, 15 years, if not longer, on that station. I've worked in radio for quite a while, but it made my decision a lot easier from a creative standpoint because honestly, my relationships with the people over at KFAN, some of my best friends, working with them, the station's exploded, so we see a lot of each other on and off the air. And it's also kind of opened up a lot of new opportunities for me down the road as well.
So just in a month, you're already feeling that. That's good. I mean, a lot of people get kind of so depressed when they leave.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I got a little skittish with people saying, congratulations on your retirement. And I always want to be, I don't want to get defensive about it. I'm saying, well, I'm just retiring from TV. I'm not leaving radio.
Totally, right.
And that's okay. I took it as a, and I still, people say that to me on the street and everything, and I'm fine with it. But once in a while I'll say, don't forget I'm still on the radio.
Right, you can
but the retirement part, I think, had I gone cold turkey and left both television and radio, I think I would have gone stir crazy after 50 years of kind of on the same treadmill. So this has made it a lot easier, plus I'm challenged by a lot of new things that are going on and liberated that I get to go home at 3 o'clock, which has opened up a whole new world for me.
You said just a few minutes ago when we were talking before the tape started rolling, that you really are not missing that nighttime work per se.
I haven't missed it for a second. I mean, I miss the relationships. I mentioned at a going away party the Vikings had for me that I miss the locker room, but I don't miss the game. I miss the relationships, but I don't miss being on the air, staying there till 10 o'clock watching every Timberwolves game and Twins game and Wild game. And as much of a sports fan as I am, where you have to be in tune with what's going on, I'd much rather be watching NCIS, Netflix, relaxing with my wife, sitting on the couch in my sweatpants and not have to wear a sport coat, tie, and thinking about that. So more than anything, I had a coffee cup on my desk forever, and it said, all I really want is a normal life. I've never really had a normal life, and I'm experiencing things that most people
get to have.
I mean, I like working hard and getting things done, but I know at 3 o'clock, I get to go home instead of starting my next job, which was always my A job. So it's really been, that's the best word to come up with, Mary, is it's been liberating to feel such a relief. And I get caught up sometimes going, well, we're meeting friends at 6 o'clock that night. I'm going, well, I have to, geez, darn it, I got to work. I'm like, oh, wait, no, I don't. I get to go. I get to hang out with you guys. I get to go to a movie or something. Well, I've never done this before. So it's been fun.
That's great to hear. I'm
and it feels
happy
good.
for you.
That's the way I wanted to feel.
Yeah, that's great. And we should plug you're on at 2 to 3 on KFAN.
I'm on it 3 mornings a week. I'm on the Power Trip on KFAN. Nice write-up. That's on from like 20 to 8 till 9 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Every 3 mornings a week, and then I'm on from 2 to 3 with the Common Man every day from Monday through Friday, and soon to be starting, if this is already starting, we're going to be starting a podcast as well, which I'm really excited about. Again, I think radio right now is really a hot medium because what we're doing right now, a lot of people don't do in their normal lives, having a real conversation. We're too busy texting each other and Facebook Living and all that other kind of stuff with technology that even close friends, adults, not just the millennials, communicate that way with each other all day. And I'm going, it's the lost art of having a cup of coffee and having a real conversation with people.
Eye contact.
Yeah, eye contact. And having radio, I think, does do that. It's a real much more intimate kind of thing. And I think my brand certainly changed over the years with my being integrated in radio even more, where people got to know me more, because TV is 3-4 minutes here and there. Even though I had a half-hour show on Sunday nights for years and years, I still got to show a lot more of myself. People got to know me a lot more on radio than they did on TV.
I worked in radio for a while too, as I mentioned, and I thought in a way it was harder because you're not relying on the, all the visuals. Everything's got to come through tone of voice and what you're saying.
Yeah, and I know where you're coming from with it. I think TV is harder only because whatever words are right, I bet the video better match up with it if I'm writing one of those, if I'm doing one of those stories.
You had that part too.
And yeah, that component is much different. It's just a much different stilted sort of writing style. With radio, of course, you're just freelancing basically.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
And I think that comfort factor took a long time to be comfortable. And I've worked in radio since I started in 1986 on KQRS with Tom Bernard. I started before he did. And I got a chance to work with some of the giants of the business. A lot of people who grew up listening to WCCO radio. I mean, for me, even though I left under weird terms to go to CCO radio and work with Boone and Erickson and Steve Cannon and Sid Hartman, and these people were the giants of the business. For me to be able to work with them.
As a kid too, really.
Well, pretty much. I mean, I was kind of.
You were young.
Yeah, still pretty young. Yeah. And these people were the icons of radio. So, I mean, I learned a lot from them as much as anyone in the business.
You've had some great mentors.
Boy, did I ever.
You mention a lot of them in the book, but if you would pick your probably most influential mentor, who would it be, Mark?
Well, early on, it had to be my boss, Hal Scott, who was a sports director. And I've told this story that when I was learning how to write for television, I would take wire copy and rewrite it or write some script.
For him, right?
And there's an invention people used. It's called a typewriter, and people used to type on a typewriter with carbon paper.
Right.
And be 3 or 4 copies. Anyway, I would try to write the perfect script. I'd hand it to Hal, and he'd take out his pen. I would see him scratch out this word and scratch out that word. I'm going, and scratch out that word. I'm going, oh man. He would never say anything to me, but I would learn by watching him. And when Hal passed away, I got to eulogize him, and I said to people, I said, one of the proudest days early in my career was when I handed Hal a script and he didn't take that pen out. I knew I had been accepted, and that was true. I mean, so Hal was really instrumental early on. But I had many.
What year did he die, Mark? Do you remember?
I'm guessing it was probably 20 years ago now.
Okay. I remember him vividly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hal, and of course his older brother Ray was one of the great play-by-play men in history of broadcasting, and I got a chance to know Ray real well too. So those two, but I had, my gosh, we had a dozen people in our newsroom that went on to become CBS correspondents, and they were all there at the same time. I called it a Field of Dreams newsroom. So just by osmosis, I would pick up things from people.
Your description of the newsroom, or the main space in the basement, damp, dusty, crowded, and smoky. It sounded like something out of a 1950s movie.
That's a great line, because when you see those old newsrooms, and I think there's been some movies that have depicted it, where it was a basement studio on 9th and LaSalle, and it was the old Radio City theater that was there, and for whatever reason they put the newsroom in the basement, and I'm very tall, but a lot of people had a duck, and I would say 85-90% of the people in there smoked. So you had smoking, you had little or no ventilation, you had chemicals that were used to process film, and one exit. So someone said that surprised the fire marshal didn't condemn the place.
Yeah, really?
But I mean, people used the old film cans as ashtrays.
Were you a smoker back then?
No.
So then that had
I've
to
never
bother
smoked in my
you.
life, and you don't think of it at the time. But I'm surprised the secondhand smoke didn't get me. I mean, it was intense. And the studio was on the 4th floor, so
running up and down.
Run up and down the stairs.
That strengthened your lungs.
Yeah, world's slowest elevator that would get stuck many times, and the control room was on the 5th floor.
I mean, the description was just
we were
fascinating.
one happy camper though. We were a troop. We had to fight through it. So it was a learning experience, and then some.
I have so many questions, but can you briefly tell us how you, as a 17-year-old, got your foot in the door there? Because it's the most unique beginning to a
Well, getting my foot in the door is
career.
one thing. How I managed to stay there is quite another. And
That's
with
true.
all due
Two
modesty.
separate.
But I was living in St. Louis Park, and my neighbor was Phil Jones, who was a reporter, he was a Capitol reporter for WCCO television at the time. And I used to see him, on TV, and then he'd come home and cut the grass and do normal things. And they'd ask me to babysit for his kids, young kids, once in a while. And I just had this, I grew up as a sports fan. My dad started taking me to, go for football games. And when the Twins and Vikings started, I started going there. So I played sports, but I just had this, I don't know, this fascination. TV sports was not a big deal back then. Mm-hmm. Something, I don't know what drew me to what he was doing. I really don't know. I mean, it must have had a calling of some sort.
Yeah.
So I asked Phil one day, I said, "Do you think there's any chance that I can, just hang out down there?" And he was leaving. He was being hired by the network. So he was leaving CCO. So he called Hal Scott and said, "I got this kid that's bugging me. No, I know he's just in high school, but do you mind if he just shows up?" And Hal said, "Fine, I don't care." So I went down there on a Saturday. Hal was not working that day. Ralph John Fritz, the late R.J. Fritz, who was one of my dearest friends for many, many years, was there. And I remember going down there and just hanging out, and I ran into Dave Moore, and it was like, oh, my eyes were like saucers.
The man.
Yeah, and I just remember doing whatever I did that day, just hanging out. I remember taking the bus home and telling my parents, I've got to go back there on Monday.
It was almost like you were magnetized.
I was.
I
knew right then and there I needed to be back there. Yeah. I was working at a drugstore part-time, obviously going to school, so I was in high school. The biggest question, which I've never had answered, I probably don't ever want to know the answer to, is why they hired me in August that year, months later, part-time. Why would you hire, why would you hire a high school, not a junior in college, a junior in high school? Why would you hire anyone even part-time to pay him anything? I would have been happy to give me a donut. and so I got hired part-time, and I ended up helping write a sports year-ender. I was limited, but I mean, I always stressed just learning the fundamentals from people. I did whatever, I swept floor, did whatever they wanted me to do.
And but you just gradually got more and more assignments, didn't you? I mean, that's just such a unique beginning.
It is. It's truly, it could never be done again because no one would, not because I was anything special, the fact that, we have interns, right, internship programs. People come in, they work for a couple months, they get paid, then they have to leave. That's in college. And
now after they read your book or think about your career, they're feeling kind of rejected. It didn't happen to me.
Well, I always tell people that, and I've had a lot of interns myself, that what happened to me could never happen, but you have to find a different avenue. What applied to me still applies to you. Work on the fundamentals. Don't just say, I want to be an anchor.
And follow something you love.
Right. Be passionate about it, but work on the fundamentals of good, no matter how technical, logical advancements we've had, the basics still apply. And if you haven't mastered the basics, you're not going anywhere. Be yourself, learn how to write, learn how to do this, and just be relentless. That's the best advice I can tell people.
That's great advice. Richard Leiter, I don't know if you know him, Power of Purpose, Repacking Your Bags. He's a great writer and kind of a guru in the field of career counseling. And he said to me once on the show, I think about 15% of people love what they do work-wise. And I thought, yeah, that kind of fits with what I know. But as I thought more about you and read your book and talked to people about you, I thought you're in the 1% mark of people who not only love their work, you really, really have loved your work. I mean, more than anybody I know.
Well, I never took it for granted. I still don't. I mean, I always felt like when I had my time to go on the air, to me, that was like an actor on Broadway, an actor, whatever it might be. This is my time, and I'm not going to ever take this for granted. I always loved the process many times more than sometimes the presentation, because I loved to write. I still do, and
that's where
writing
the time
conversationally.
is put in,
But the passion had to be there, and I think
the
that the
passion.
people had to, you have to be yourself, because if you're not,
Right.
people
It
are going to show.
shows
Sometimes,
right
believe me,
away.
I've been around a lot of people who, when the lights come on and they look at that red light, and there's someone else other than they are off the air.
Yeah.
Those people usually
Doesn't
don't last
work,
very
does
long
it?
because, especially in this area, Midwest
Right.
people, and we have a Midwest produced, I don't know how many phenomenal, as you know, journalists. This is a hotbed of journalism. People are smart.
They want authenticity. don't they?
Exactly, and if you're not, they will see through it, and you won't last in this market. And I think that's the key thing.
One of the things you wrote, though, that surprised me was that you had part of you, see if I understood this right, had a sense that you had to work to present your real self on television.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Sure. It
Because-
took time, because I think there's we used to have consultants, and I think that I had a news director that said, I want to see more of you.
Was that
early
Ron
on.
Hamburg?
Ron Hamburg and Reed Johnson.
Oh,
I think
okay,
Reed
right.
Johnson more in particular. But
Okay.
Ron Hamburg, when I did my first audition tape for him, and he goes, it's okay, but don't ever expect to be on the air here. I went, okay, well, thanks a lot. Okay. He came back, and he was one of the first ones to line up when I had my first book signing down at Barnes & Noble. And he turned out to be phenomenal. But Reed, and I understood what he was saying, because I think in sports in particular, you don't have to necessarily play it safe. And I don't mean to be gyrating and coming up with all these catchphrases, but showing your personality. And I think it just took time to feel that comfort in yourself to go, hey, I don't know if you're upset about something with the Twins or whatever it might be, or you want to reflect what the viewers are thinking about this game or whatever it might be. I think I was too closed down, shut down for quite a while before I figured that out, how to become more comfortable with myself and to present myself in a way that was really me. And once I hit my stride that way, then there was no turning back. And even up till the last couple of weeks of my career, I felt like I still get room for improvement. I can still do this better.
See,
and I never
that's
felt
what made you so good, though.
Well,
it makes you so good.
I was hungry. I still and I honestly, I think because I'm able to write my own material, and I'm not knocking news anchors, but because they're not invested in the copy that they're reading,
Right, it's
they have
different.
producers that write for them.
Yeah.
And that's not to knock them. I don't think it's as easy for them to, and granted, they have to play it straight. They're not politically or whatever it might be.
Right.
They have
Neutral.
moments where they can show, but I have the entire 3.5, 4, and it's my writing, it's my style, it's how I want to present
Your
it.
observations.
Exactly,
of
and I
what
think
you
that's
are.
what I love to do, was
Yeah.
to not just I could write a sportscast 3 o'clock in the morning and in my sleep, but writing something that could connect with the viewers was my challenge every night.
And
I
I
love
think
that.
you really did do that. I watched your Sunday night shows forever, and it was sort of my transition from the end of the free weekend to the work week, and there was something
I
very
love hearing that.
comforting about
Yeah,
some real conversation
right.
with whoever you had on,
Yeah, local programming is something that unfortunately has gone by the wayside to a great
I
extent.
know it.
And I did that show for almost 30 years, and we had budget issues at the end. There's nothing to hide right now about it. And it got to be a point where I just couldn't rely on my good nature to have people come in every Sunday night at 10:30, and we just didn't have the staff anymore. And I loved doing it, but it was also, as you mentioned, an opportunity to have more of a conversation with certain athletes and other people, seeing different sides of them. And I loved hearing exactly what you said, Mary, because I had a lot of people say that I loved finishing my Sunday nights. It became kind of a tradition. And it started with the Viking show and then turned it around year round. And that was always the highlight of the week for me, because, again,
You had more time.
I had a half hour they
Yeah,
gave me to
yeah.
put on there. Do you think I'm going to
Real.
waste it?
Right.
No, I really put a lot of effort into that,
Yeah,
as
well,
much as I
it's a
could.
great show. One of the reasons you are shifting your work focus is your wife's health.
Mm-hmm.
And can you just comment on that briefly? Because that colors life right now in a huge way for you.
I met my wife, Denise. She was a nighttime artist back when I first started. Well, not initially, but she went to the College of Art and
Early
Design.
on,
And early in the 70s, I remember coming down, she was a nighttime artist. She used to draw Watergate, the pictures, we called them flops back then. whether it be Haldeman, Ehrlichman, all of Nixon's henchmen and all that,
Right.
But it did a lot more than that too, and worked in the news department. So it was her first job, and that's how we met. And our courtship lasted 4 or 5 years until my brain finally kicked in and realized I better do something about this because she's not going to be sticking around for me much longer. But so we've had, a long relationship. Like any relationship, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of decisions to be
It's
made.
the hardest thing in the world, I think.
Well, especially in TV, I was working
know.
nights and weekends, and she was
Yeah, your
working
go-go
days.
life.
And we commuted for a year and a half. She went to Chicago, and this was before we had kids. And then we knew it was a finite time, and moved back. We kind of held it together and had our kids, and we're on the road to, the direction I wanted to go career-wise, and she was still, very involved with a lot of other projects of her own. And then July 18th was the date. I mean, she was having trouble remembering some words, and kind of a nondescript.
2018.
2018, yeah, last July, and had an MRI, and I'll never forget the phone call. I got a call, and the doctor said, Denise has a brain tumor, and you need to get down to Abbott Hospital right now. My knees just buckled, and
It's like the
she had
worst news.
I was just on a jolt that, I was expecting just to say, well, this is what's going on. Well, I didn't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
some
you don't
kind
think
of
you don't
weird
think of it.
migraine or something.
Yeah, you don't think of anything like that
No,
because she's been really healthy all these years. So 2 weeks later, she had surgery. She was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is horrific. I mean, it's what John McCain had,
Right,
and
and Kennedy's
son,
Yeah.
Joe Biden, and so we were dealt just a shot that you don't expect at all. And we through some connections, we got letters from President Obama and speaking of Joe
Did you
Biden.
really?
Yeah, really meaningful, not just kind of rubber stamped. I mean, heartfelt, especially Biden, whose son Bo, died of glioblastoma, and he wrote separate paragraphs to all of us. So it's a different journey. That's all I can tell you. And I have had a lot of very, very sad nights, and at the same time, very grateful nights because you just never know. None of us do.
It
And
changes the way you view life, doesn't it?
We're blessed because we have a lot of friends, we have a lot of support, and I've been in the waiting room for radiation treatments and other things. I looked around the room and I see a lot of people there sitting there, and I always say to myself, I hope that person has a support system. That
makes
we
a
all
huge. You can kind of lean back a little
but
bit.
when
on
it's all said
others.
and done, it's still you and her.
Yeah,
And at night, I've had some pretty rough nights, that's for sure. And the worst thing you can do is project what your life is going to be like. And I try not to. I can try to stay calm right now talking about it, but it's horrific.
Mine is life-changing in
Yeah,
the
it
biggest
is.
way possible. We've got just a couple minutes left.
Sure.
And I wondered if you could just give us, like, off the top of your head, you haven't seen these names,
No.
just a reaction of why this person
Sure.
is excelling the way he or she is. Lindsey Vonn.
Lindsey Vonn, I use the word relentless about my career. She was relentless. I mean, you talk about getting knocked down and getting back up. Remember her skiing at Buck Hill,
Right.
and to see her tenacity. And every time I see someone at that level, downhill skiing, and you go, how do you ever recover from that? When you tear up your knee to get back on the horse again.
You know what?
So I think she's been a real credit. I mean, just
Courageous.
tough, courageous,
Yeah.
relentless, and wish her nothing but the best in her retirement.
Yeah.
She's going to do well no matter what she does.
Jim Marshall. Just have a,
He was with me the other night, and
Was he?
the captain. He is the Vikings captain, a survivor, 100%
and so
survivor.
close to Bud Grant.
Loyal to Bud, and gregarious, and just a big lover of life, and a man who was the most amazing football players I've ever seen. Yeah, durable.
Harmon Killebrew.
Harmon was my childhood idol. I got to meet him as a young reporter. Got to play some golf with him. He had him on my show. Ended up being very close to him. attended his funeral when he passed away. He taught a lot of young ball players how to sign an autograph the proper way. He was Paul Bunyan here. He was our Paul Bunyan, and the nicest human being you'd ever be around in your life.
That's what other people have
Yeah,
said
he
too.
was the killer. The killer was a different kind of name. He was a sweetheart.
One more, Lindsay Whalen. She's had a
Lindsay
hard
Whalen
year.
is, I've known her since Hutchinson High School a little bit, but obviously at the University of Minnesota. And more than anything, I think of Lindsay beyond her skill set, which is obvious, transcending role model. I mean, she became a role model for thousands and thousands of young girls who looked at her not just from an athletic standpoint, but said, no matter what field I go into, I can be like Lindsay. And I think that's her true mark in our
She
in the
will
state of
love to
Minnesota.
hear that.
Well, it's absolutely the truth. She's very close to Lindsay, and when she said, when my farewell show, she said, excuse me, one of my dreams was to be on Rosen Sports Sunday. I'm like, wait, what,
Oh,
really?
I remember that.
Yeah,
That's
it was very
great.
cool, very cool.
If people want to get hold of you, what's the best way, Mark?
Wow, that's a great question. Right now, since I'm kind of in
Tune
between,
into the radio, maybe.
tune in the
huh?
radio station,
Yeah.
and they can always contact me through KFAN,
Okay.
and absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
My
for coming
pleasure. I really
down.
enjoyed it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
good.
Thank you,
Yeah, I
Mary.
loved getting
Thank
to
you.
sit and visit for half an
was
hour with you.
wonderful.
Thank you for joining us. I'll be back again next week. Until then, have a good week.